Welcome back. Welcome to this quiet space where time slows down, where the present fades, and where history opens its arms to pull us into moments we never lived but can still feel in our bones. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Before we begin this journey together, if you find yourself moved by what we explore, if these stories touch something within you, please take a moment to leave a like on this video. And if you'd like to travel through more forgotten moments with me, subscribe and ring that bell. It helps us keep these memories alive. I'm curious, where are you right now? What city are you in? And what time is it where you are? Drop a comment below. I love knowing that we're connected across distances, across time zones, all gathering here to remember together. Maybe you're watching as the sun rises, or perhaps as darkness settles in. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, you're exactly where you need to be. Now, I want you to get comfortable. Adjust your position. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the weight leave your body. Slow your breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Let the world around you blur and fade. Close your eyes if you need to. We're about to step through a doorway in time to walk in the footsteps of men who stood on the edge of history, who tasted fear and hope in equal measure. We're going back to May 1940, to the beaches of Dunkirk, to 9 days that would determine the fate of nations. You wake to the sound of distant thunder, but there are no clouds in the sky above you. Your eyes open slowly, crusted with salt and sand, and for a moment, you don't remember where you are. The light is wrong, too bright, too harsh, stabbing through your eyelids before you can adjust. Your mouth tastes of copper and ash, your throat raw and dry as parchment. You try to swallow and can't. The sand beneath you is cold, damp, uncomfortable. It's worked its way into everything. Your boots, your trousers, the collar of your uniform, the creases of your skin. You can feel each grain, thousands of tiny points of pressure against your body. Your uniform is stiff with dried sweat and seawater and something darker you don't want to think about. When you shift, trying to sit up, every muscle in your body screams in protest. You haven't slept properly in 4 days, maybe 5. Time has become elastic, meaningless. You force yourself upright, propping yourself on your elbows first, then pushing to a sitting position. The world spins for a moment, your vision going gray at the edges, and you have to pause, head hanging between your shoulders, waiting for it to pass. When you finally look up, when you finally take in the scene around you, the breath catches in your throat. The beach stretches in both directions as far as you can see, a vast expanse of gray-yellow sand that seems to go on forever. But it's not empty. God, it's not empty. There are thousands of men here, tens of thousands. They stand in long, snaking queues that stretch from the dunes down to the waterline, patient as cattle, barely moving. Some sit in groups, huddled together for warmth or comfort, or simply because they're too exhausted to stand. Others lie flat on their backs, staring at the sky, and you can't tell from here if they're resting, or if they've given up entirely, or if they're dead. The sea beyond is a flat, oily gray, barely moving, reflecting the colorless sky. It looks cold, it looks infinite, and it looks empty, heartbreakingly, terrifyingly empty. You'd been promised ships. Everyone had been promised ships. The Royal Navy was coming, they said. Just get to the beach, they said. Just get to Dunkirk, and you'll be saved. But there are no ships. Not yet. Just that vast gray emptiness and the sound of water lapping against sand, with the gentleness of a mother tucking in a child, completely at odds with the reality of where you are and what's happening. You reach for your helmet, finding it half buried in the sand beside you, and brush it off before placing it back on your head. The weight of it feels both comforting and oppressive. Your rifle is still slung across your back. You check it automatically. A habit drilled into you through endless training, through the weeks of fighting retreat that brought you here. It's caked with sand, the mechanism probably jammed, possibly useless. You should clean it. You should maintain your weapon. But what's the point? What are you going to shoot at? The sea? The man next to you stirs. You hadn't noticed him before, but he's close enough that you could reach out and touch his shoulder. He's younger than you, maybe 19, maybe younger than that. Baby-faced, with the kind of smooth cheeks that probably don't even need shaving yet. His uniform marks him as Essex Regiment, though the insignia is so dirty you can barely make it out. His eyes are open, staring at nothing, and there's a quality to his stillness that makes your stomach clench. "Hey," you say, your voice coming out as a croak. "Hey, mate." He doesn't respond, doesn't blink. For a terrible moment you think he's dead, that he died right there next to you while you slept, but then you see his chest rise and fall, shallow but steady. He's just gone somewhere else, somewhere inside himself where the world can't reach him. You leave him alone. You've seen it before. Some men break loud, screaming and crying and tearing at their uniforms. Others break quiet, like this, just disappearing into themselves. You don't know which is worse. You stand, your legs shaking, and brush the sand from your uniform. A pointless gesture, but something to do with your hands. The thunder sound comes again, louder now, and you realize it's not thunder at all. It's artillery. The Germans. They're close. Close enough that you can hear the guns, can hear the distant crump and crash as shells land somewhere inland, somewhere among the ruins of the town that lies behind the dunes. How long before they get here? How long before they realize that there are hundreds of thousands of British and French soldiers trapped on this beach, unable to move, unable to retreat any further? The sea is at your back now. There's nowhere left to run. You start walking, moving down toward the waterline, weaving between groups of men. Nobody looks at you. Nobody asks where you're going. Everyone is wrapped in their own private nightmare, their own calculation of odds, their own prayers, or bargains with God, or fate, or whoever might be listening. The sand is soft and shifting beneath your boots, making each step an effort. Your legs are heavy, leaden, and you remember that you haven't eaten since… when? Yesterday morning? The day before? Someone had shared a tin of bully beef and some hardtack biscuits, and you'd wolfed it down without tasting it. Your stomach is empty now, a hollow ache that you've learned to ignore. As you walk, you start to notice details. A discarded helmet rolling slowly in the wind. A gas mask, half buried, its empty eyes staring up at the sky. Rifles stacked in neat pyramids. Men have been told to leave their weapons, that there's no room on the ships for equipment, only for men. If the ships ever come. There's a body near the water's edge. You can see it from 20 yards away, face down in the surf, rolling slightly with each wave. The water around it is dark, stained. Nobody has moved it. Nobody has covered it. There are too many bodies, too many wounded, too many dying. The living barely have energy to save themselves. You stop at the waterline, letting the cold water lap at your boots. The wind is picking up, coming off the channel, bringing with it the taste of salt and oil and smoke. You can see it now, on the horizon, a dark smudge that might be smoke from the burning oil refineries at Dunkirk, or might be the smoke from burning ships, or might be both. The wind carries sounds too, faint and distant. The rattle of machine gun fire, the crack of rifles, the almost musical whistle of falling shells. The fighting hasn't stopped. Behind you, beyond the dunes, beyond the shattered town, the British and French rearguard are still holding the perimeter, still keeping the Germans back, buying time with their blood for men like you to escape. If you can escape. If the ships come. If the Luftwaffe doesn't find you first. A voice behind you makes you turn. Got a smoke? The man is older, maybe 40, with a thick mustache that's gone gray at the edges and sergeant's stripes on his sleeve. His regiment patch identifies him as Durham Light Infantry. His eyes are bloodshot, his face haggard, but there's something steady about him, something unbroken. Some men are like that. They carry the weight without buckling. Sorry, you say, patting your pockets even though you know they're empty. Fresh out. He nods, unsurprised. Course you are. Everyone is. He stands beside you, looking out at the empty sea, and for a moment neither of you speaks. Then, you know what the worst part is? You wait, not answering, knowing he'll tell you anyway. The waiting. I've been through Mons, the Somme, Passchendaele, 20-odd years ago now, but you don't forget. And you know what? Give me a trench any day. Give me wire and mud and Jerry coming over the top. At least then you can do something. You can shoot back. You can fight. He spits into the sand. This, standing here with your thumb up your arse, waiting to see if you get bombed or if a boat shows up, this is worse than any battle I've been in. The ships will come, you hear yourself say, surprised by your own voice, surprised that you can still sound confident. The Navy won't leave us here. Maybe. The sergeant doesn't sound convinced. But will they come fast enough? That's the question, isn't it? How long before Jerry breaks through the perimeter? How long before the Stukas come back? He pauses, then adds quietly, how long before we run out of water? You hadn't thought about that. Water. You have a canteen on your belt, but it's nearly empty. You drained most of it yesterday, and there's been no opportunity to refill. How long can a man last without water? 3 days? 4? In this cold, maybe longer. But the thirst is already a constant presence, making every swallow painful, making your tongue feel swollen and thick. The sergeant must see something in your face because he laughs, a dry, humorless sound. Don't worry, son. We'll be dead or rescued before thirst gets us. One or the other. He claps you on the shoulder, a gesture meant to be reassuring that feels more like a goodbye, and walks off down the beach, moving with the slow, measured pace of a man conserving energy. You stand there for a long time, watching the waves, watching the empty horizon, feeling the sun begin to warm your face. It's going to be a beautiful day. Clear skies, light winds, perfect visibility, perfect bombing weather. The sound of aircraft engines reaches you before you see them. A distant drone, rising and falling, getting closer. All around you, men are looking up, hands shielding their eyes, trying to spot them against the glare of the sun. Friend or foe? RAF or Luftwaffe? Your life might depend on the answer, but there's nothing you can do except wait and watch and hope. 3 shapes appear, small as insects, moving fast and low across the water. Spitfires. You recognize the distinctive elliptical wings, the smooth lines. A cheer goes up from the men around you, ragged and weak but genuine. The RAF. Finally. Someone hasn't forgotten about you. The Spitfires pass overhead, their Merlin engines singing, and bank away toward the south, toward the smoke and the fighting. They're gone in seconds, leaving only the fading sound of their engines and a renewed sense of, not hope exactly, but something. A reminder that you're not completely abandoned, that someone is still fighting for you, even if you can't fight for yourself. You watch until they disappear into the haze, then turn and start walking back up the beach. The queues have grown longer while you were standing there. More men have arrived from the town, stumbling out of the dunes, some helping wounded comrades, some carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs. They join the lines without being told, finding their place, settling into wait. You find a spot near one of the queues and sit down in the sand. The young Essex regiment soldier is still where you left him, still staring at nothing. You wonder if he'll snap out of it, or if he's gone for good. You've heard of men like that. Men who never came back from wherever they went in their heads. Shell shock, they called it in the last war. Combat fatigue now. Different words for the same breaking. An officer is walking along the beach, a Navy captain by his uniform, clipboard in hand. He's trying to organize the cues, trying to maintain some sense of order and discipline. "Stay in line," he calls out, his voice carrying across the sand. "When the ships come, we'll load in an orderly fashion. No rushing, no panic. Everyone will get their turn." But there are no ships. The sea remains empty, and the sound of German artillery is getting closer. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and let the sun warm your face. You think about home, about England, green and damp and safe, just 26 miles across that gray water. So close, impossibly far. You think about your mother, wonder if she knows where you are, if she's heard about Dunkirk, if she's praying for you. You think about the girl you kissed at the train station before you shipped out. Sarah, her name was Sarah, and wonder if you'll ever see her again, if you'll ever taste her lips, if you'll ever get the chance to tell her that you think you might have loved her. The sun moves across the sky. The cues grow longer. The artillery grows louder. The sea remains empty. And you wait. The sound starts as a whisper on the edge of hearing, so faint that at first you think you're imagining it. A high-pitched whine, distant and somehow wrong, like the cry of some predatory bird circling far overhead. You've learned to hate that sound. You've learned what it means. All around you, men are looking up, scanning the sky with expressions ranging from resignation to naked fear. The cues ripple with movement as soldiers shift position, hands unconsciously checking weapons they no longer carry, looking for cover where there is none. "Here they come," someone mutters, and you don't need to ask who they are. The Stukas appear out of the sun. They always come out of the sun, making them impossible to spot until it's too late, dropping out of the glare like vengeful angels. 1, 2, 3. You count 6 of them, their distinctive inverted gull wings making them unmistakable. Junkers, Ju-87s, dive bombers. The Luftwaffe's signature weapon, designed specifically for one purpose, to strike terror into anyone unlucky enough to be beneath them. The whine increases, rising in pitch, becoming a scream that seems to bore directly into your skull. It's the Jericho trompete, the sirens mounted on the aircraft specifically to create that nightmare sound. Psychological warfare made audible. The sound of incoming death. "Take cover," someone shouts. An officer, you think, though you can't see who. The order is pointless. Cover? Where? The beach is flat, open, exposed. The dunes are too far for most men to reach. The sea offers no protection. There's nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, nothing to do but wait and hope that the bombs fall somewhere else, on someone else. You press yourself flat against the sand, your cheek against the cold, damp grit, your hands over your head in the futile gesture that every soldier makes when death comes from above. Around you, thousands of men do the same, the orderly cues dissolving into a carpet of prone bodies. From a distance, you must look like a field of fallen wheat, all bent in the same direction by the same terrible wind. The scream of the Stukas is unbearable now, so loud it feels like it's inside your head, inside your chest, vibrating your bones. You want to clench your teeth, but you remember being told, was it training, or did another soldier tell you, to keep your mouth open during bombing runs, that the pressure wave from an explosion can rupture your eardrums if your jaw is clenched. So you lie there, mouth open like a dying fish, pressing yourself into the sand as if you could burrow through it to safety, and you wait for the bombs to fall. The first explosion comes with no warning, just a colossal crump that you feel more than hear. that punches through your body like a fist, forcing the air from your lungs. The earth beneath you jumps, and for an instant, you're weightless, separated from the ground, suspended by pure force. Then gravity reasserts itself, and you slam back down, your vision going white, your ears ringing with a high, pure tone that drowns out everything else. Another explosion, closer. The sand around you erupts in a fountain, a column of debris that blots out the sky. You curl into a ball, making yourself as small as possible, and something hot and sharp whips past your head, so close you feel the displaced air against your cheek. Shrapnel. Death missing you by inches. More explosions, coming so fast they blend together into a continuous roar. The world has become nothing but noise and impact, and the taste of sand and blood in your mouth. You've bitten your lip. You don't remember doing it, but you can taste the copper, can feel the sting. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters except surviving the next second, the next heartbeat. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stops. The explosions cease. The scream of the diving aircraft fades, becoming a receding whine as the Stukas pull up and away, their bomb loads expended, returning to France to rearm and refuel, and come back to do it all again. For a long moment, nobody moves. The silence. It's not really silence. Your ears are still ringing too badly for that, but the absence of explosions feels unreal, suspect, like it might shatter at any moment. Then, slowly, men begin to stir, lifting their heads, checking themselves for wounds, looking around to see who's still alive. You push yourself up on trembling arms. Your whole body is shaking, a full-body tremor you can't control. Your hands won't stay still. Your breathing is too fast, too shallow, and no matter how hard you try, you can't slow it down. You've survived. You're alive. Why are you alive? The bombs fell all around you. Men were screaming. The world was ending, and somehow, impossibly, you're still breathing. The beach around you is transformed. The smooth sand is pocked with craters, some 10 feet across, filled with smoking debris. Bodies lie scattered like broken dolls, some still, others moving weakly, calling for help in voices that sound very young and very far away. A section of the queue just 30 yards from where you lay is simply gone. Where there were men standing patiently waiting for ships, there's now just a crater and pieces of things that used to be people. The smell hits you next. Smoke and cordite and something else, something organic and terrible that makes your gorge rise. You turn your head and vomit, bringing up nothing but bile and spit because there's nothing in your stomach to expel. Your body heaves anyway, trying to reject what your eyes have seen, what your mind is trying to process. "Medic!" someone is shouting. "Medic! For Christ's sake, someone help!" You stumble to your feet, your legs barely supporting you. The young Essex Regiment soldier, the one who'd been staring at nothing, is sitting up now, suddenly and horribly animated. He's holding his hands in front of his face, turning them over and over, examining them as if he's never seen them before. His uniform is torn, and there's blood on his chest, though you can't tell if it's his or someone else's. His mouth is moving, and after a moment, you realize he's counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Counting his fingers over and over, making sure they're all still there. You walk past him, toward the sounds of screaming. The medical personnel are already at work. You can see the Red Cross armbands, see the stretcher bearers running toward the worst of the wounded. But there are too many. There are always too many. For every man they can help, 3 more lie bleeding, crying out, being ignored not through cruelty, but through simple mathematics. Save who you can. Let the rest die. It's the only way. You find a man sitting in the sand, his face pale as milk, his hands pressed against his stomach. Blood seeps between his fingers, dark and steady. He looks up at you, his eyes meeting yours, and there's a question in them. Help me. Save me. Please. You kneel beside him, not knowing what to do, having no training, no supplies, nothing but the useless desire to help. Medic! You shout, your voice raw. Medic over here! But the medics are busy, overwhelmed, and you know they won't come in time. You know it, and the wounded man knows it too. You can see the knowledge in his eyes, see the moment when hope dies and acceptance settles in its place. Tell my wife, he whispers, his voice barely audible. Tell her I... He doesn't finish. His eyes fix on something beyond your shoulder, something you can't see, and the tension goes out of his body all at once. His hands fall away from his stomach, and the blood flows faster, pooling in the sand beneath him, soaking into the earth that has drunk so much blood already. You stay kneeling there for a moment, looking at his face, trying to remember it so you can tell his wife, if you survive, if you ever find out who he was. But already the details are blurring, becoming generic. Brown hair, regular features. He could be anyone. He is anyone. He's every soldier who ever died in every war, anonymous in death despite the fierce uniqueness of his life. You stand, wiping your hands on your trousers, leaving dark stains. The shaking has subsided a little, replaced by a strange, numb feeling, as if you're wrapped in cotton wool, as if the world is happening at a distance. You've seen death before, saw it in Belgium, saw it during the retreat through France. But something about this feels different, worse, more cruel. To have come so far, to have survived so much, only to die here, on a beach, waiting for ships that might never come. The queues are reforming already. The dead are being dragged away from the lines, laid out in rough rows above the high water mark where the tide won't reach them. The wounded who can walk are being helped back into position. The ones who can't are left with the medics, who work with desperate efficiency, doing triage, making impossible choices about who gets morphine, who gets bandaged, who gets marked with an M on their forehead to indicate they've been given morphine so they don't get a double dose. Who gets written off. An officer, a major by his insignia, is moving through the chaos, his voice calm and steady. Reform the lines. Everyone back in position. The ships are coming. The ships will be here soon. Maintain discipline. Britain expects every man to do his duty. Britain expects. Nelson's signal from Trafalgar more than a century ago. Another impossible situation. Another moment when everything hung in the balance. Somehow, impossibly, they'd won that day. Can lightning strike twice? Can history be kind enough to repeat its miracles? You return to your spot in the queue, finding it mostly by memory since the landmarks have all changed. The sand is torn up, scorched, littered with debris. You pick up a helmet that's lying nearby, not yours but close enough, and put it on. It's too big, wobbles slightly on your head, but it's something. A token of protection against a world that has become unprotectable. The sun is past its zenith now, beginning its long slide toward evening. How many hours have you been here? How many more hours remain? The artillery sounds louder. Definitely louder, you're not imagining it. The German advance continues. The perimeter is shrinking, time is running out, and still the sea remains empty. No. Wait. There. On the horizon. Is that? You strain your eyes, hardly daring to hope. Other men have seen it too, are pointing, murmuring. A shape, dark against the gray water. Then another, and another. Ships, actual ships, coming toward the beach. A cheer goes up, weak and ragged but genuine. Men are standing, craning their necks, trying to see better. The queues tighten, becoming more organized, hope giving them energy they didn't have a moment ago. The shapes grow larger, resolving into details. Destroyers. 3 of them, their gray hulls cutting through the water, coming in as close to the beach as they dare. They're moving slowly, carefully, aware of the sandbars and the shallow water. As you watch, one of them deploys a line. They're going to try to ferry men out using small boats. The officer with the clipboard is shouting now, organizing, directing. 1st Battalion, right side. 2nd Battalion, left. No crowding. Wait for the boats. Anyone who swamps a boat will be left behind, understand? Maintain order. The small boats appear, lowered from the destroyers, rowed by sailors in their dark blue uniforms. They look impossibly tiny against the vastness of the sea, like toys in a bathtub. Each one can hold maybe 20 men, maybe 30 if they pack in tight. You do the math in your head. 3 destroyers, maybe 6 boats between them, 30 men per boat per trip. Say they can make 4 trips per hour. That's... what? 700 men per hour? Maybe 1,000 if they're fast? There are 50,000 men on this beach. Maybe more. At this rate, it will take 3 days to evacuate everyone. And you don't have 3 days. The Germans will be here long before that. But it's something. It's a start. And right now, that's enough to keep hope alive. The first boats reach the beach, their bows grinding onto the sand. Men surge forward, not panicking, not yet, but eager, desperate. The sailors at the oars are shouting, trying to maintain control. Easy, easy, 20 at a time. Any more and we'll capsize. You watch as the first group of soldiers clambers aboard, clumsy in their exhaustion, their movements uncoordinated. The boats sit lower in the water, dangerously low, and you can see the sailors exchanging worried glances. But they push off successfully, oars biting into the water, heading back toward the destroyers. The queue moves forward. One step, then another. Progress. Actual, visible progress toward salvation. And then you hear it again. That sound. That terrible whistling scream. The Stukas are back. The eastern mole stretches out into the sea like a finger pointing toward England, toward home, toward salvation that feels as distant as the stars despite being only 26 miles away. It's not really a pier. It wasn't built to dock ships, wasn't designed to hold the weight of thousands of desperate men. It's a breakwater, constructed of concrete and timber, meant to protect the harbor from storms and strong currents. But now, in this moment of absolute necessity, it's being pressed into service as an evacuation point. You've been directed here by an exhausted-looking captain who barely glanced at you before waving you toward the mole. "They're loading faster there," he'd said, his voice hoarse from shouting over the sound of aircraft and explosions. "Get going. Stay in line. Don't run." The walk across the sand toward the mole feels like crossing an alien landscape. The beach is scarred from repeated bombing runs, pocked with craters that have filled with seawater, creating strange temporary pools that reflect the gray sky. Debris litters the ground, pieces of equipment, shattered boats, things you don't want to look at too closely. The smell of oil and smoke hangs heavy in the air, mixing with the salt spray from the sea and the sweet, sick odor of death that has become an inescapable presence. The mole itself is already crowded when you reach it. Hundreds of men line both sides of the narrow walkway, pressed shoulder to shoulder, moving in a slow shuffle toward the end where a destroyer has somehow managed to tie up alongside. The warship looks enormous from this angle, its gray hull towering above the water, its deck seeming impossibly high. How are men supposed to get aboard? There's no gangplank, no ladder, just a gap of several feet between the mole and the ship's deck. You join the queue on the right side, finding your place between a Scottish corporal with a thick Highland accent and a lance corporal from the Royal Artillery who hasn't spoken a word since you stood next to him. The wood beneath your feet is slick with seawater and something else. Oil, maybe, or blood. Each step requires concentration, requires balance. On both sides of the mole, the water stretches away into the distance, and you're suddenly aware of how exposed you are here, how vulnerable. If the Stukas come back now, there's nowhere to go except into the sea. The line moves forward in fits and starts, advancing a few feet, then stopping, then advancing again. The man in front of you stumbles, catching himself against the wooden railing that runs along the mole's edge. The railing is slick too, treacherous, and you see his hand slip before he regains his grip. No one helps him. Everyone is too focused on maintaining their own precarious balance, on not falling, on not losing their place in line. "How long you reckon?" the Scottish corporal asks, his voice carrying the musical lilt of the Highlands. He's young, maybe 20, with red hair visible beneath his helmet and a spray of freckles across his nose that makes him look even younger. "How long till we're aboard?" You glance ahead, trying to estimate. The destroyer is loading men at the bow, where the foredeck is closest to the mole. Sailors are reaching down, grabbing arms, hauling soldiers up and over the rail. It's slow work. Maybe one man every 30 seconds. Maybe less. You count the men ahead of you. 50? 60? Couple hours, you say. Maybe less. Christ. He shakes his head, then looks out at the sea. 2 hours standing on this bloody plank while Jerry bombs us. Fan-fucking-tastic. He's not wrong. You can still hear the artillery inland, still see the smoke rising from the burning town. And the sky is full of aircraft, friendly and enemy, wheeling and diving, trailing smoke, occasionally falling in flames into the sea. The air battle never seems to stop. The RAF is up there, fighting to keep the Luftwaffe away from the beaches, but there are so many German aircraft, and they keep coming in waves, and every time they break through the fighter screen, men die on the beaches below. The line shuffles forward again. You're getting closer to the destroyer, close enough now that you can read its name painted on the hull, HMS Vanquisher. A good name, a powerful name. You hope it lives up to it. You hope it has enough room for everyone, though you know it doesn't. Know that even if they pack men into every inch of space below decks, there will still be thousands left on the beach when it pulls away. A sailor on the destroyer's deck shouts down, his voice barely audible over the wind and the sound of waves slapping against the hull. "Watch your step! Use both hands! We'll pull you up!" The man at the front of the line reaches up, and two sailors lean down, grabbing his arms, hauling him up and over the rail. He disappears from view, and the line moves forward again. One down. How many thousands to go? You're close enough now that you can see the sailors' faces, can see the exhaustion written on them. They've been doing this for hours, maybe days, hauling soldier after soldier onto the ship, their muscles screaming, their hands raw from gripping wet uniforms and waterlogged equipment. But they don't stop. They don't slow down. They just keep reaching down, keep pulling, keep saving lives one man at a time. The Scottish corporal goes next, scrambling up with the agility of youth, disappearing over the rail. Then it's your turn. You step to the edge of the mole, looking up at the sailors reaching down toward you. The gap between the mole and the ship seems wider now that you're standing at its edge, wide enough that you could fall between them, could slip into that dark space where the water churns and froths, where you would be crushed between wood and steel. "Come on then," one of the sailors shouts. "Jump! We've got you!" You jump, your legs propelling you upward, your hands reaching for those outstretched arms. For one terrifying moment, you're suspended in space. Nothing beneath you, nothing holding you, just air and gravity and the very real possibility of falling. Then strong hands clamp around your wrists and you're being hauled upward, your body scraping against the destroyer's hull, your feet scrambling for purchase. You get one boot onto a protruding rivet, push off, and suddenly you're up and over the rail, landing in a heap on the deck. "Move forward!" someone barks. "Don't block the rail! Keep moving!" You stumble forward, deeper into the ship, joining the crowd of soldiers being herded toward the bow. The deck is packed with men, every inch of space occupied. Some sit with their backs against bulkheads and equipment, too exhausted to stand. Others stand in groups, swaying with the gentle motion of the ship, staring at nothing. Everyone is wet, cold, covered in sand and oil and the general filth of war. You find a space near a ventilation shaft and sit down, your back against the metal, your legs stretched out in front of you. The relief of being off the beach, of being on an actual ship that will take you away from here, is so intense it's almost painful. Your chest feels tight, your throat constricted, and you realize with horror that you might cry. You haven't cried since you were a child, not even during the worst of the fighting in Belgium. But now, in this moment of safety, relative safety, the ship could still be bombed, could still sink. The emotion is overwhelming. You force it down, swallowing hard, blinking rapidly. Not here, not now. Not in front of these other men who are struggling with their own demons, their own breaking points. The destroyer's engines rumble to life, a deep vibration that you feel through the deck, through your bones. Men cheer, a ragged sound that dies quickly but carries genuine hope. The ship is preparing to leave. You're going home. But then the engines cut out. The vibration stops, and an announcement comes over the ship's speakers, tinny and distorted, but clear enough to understand. All personnel remain in position. We're staying to take on more men. Repeat, we're staying to take on more men. The Scottish corporal, who's found a spot near you, lets out a bitter laugh. Of course we are. Can't leave till we're packed like sardines, can we? God forbid we waste any space. He's right, of course. The ship can hold more. There's still space on the decks, still room below. And there are still thousands of men on the beach, thousands who deserve rescue just as much as you do. But the knowledge doesn't make it easier to bear, doesn't make the waiting less agonizing. Time passes in strange, elastic fashion. Minutes feel like hours. The sun continues its arc across the sky and shadows lengthen on the deck. More men are hauled aboard, the ship settling lower and lower in the water with each new body. You're told to move, to make room, and you shuffle to a different position, then another, always making space, always accommodating one more desperate soldier. The artillery sounds different now. Closer, definitely closer. Some of the explosions you can see, columns of smoke and debris rising from the town, from the beaches, from the dunes. The German advance hasn't stopped. The perimeter is shrinking hour by hour, minute by minute. A massive explosion shakes the air, so close and so powerful that the destroyer rocks in the water, tilting dangerously to one side before righting itself. Men cry out, grabbing for handholds, pressing themselves against anything solid. You clutch the ventilation shaft, your knuckles white, your heart hammering in your chest. "What was that?" someone yells. "Ammunition dump," someone else answers. "In the town. Jerry must have hit the ammunition dump." You crane your neck, looking inland, and see an enormous mushroom cloud rising into the sky, dark and roiling, shot through with orange flame. The explosion must have been colossal, catastrophic. You think of the men who were near it, who might have been guarding it or trying to destroy it before it fell into German hands, and you know with certainty that none of them survived. No one could survive something like that. The ship's captain makes another announcement. "All personnel brace for departure. We're pulling out. Repeat, we're pulling out now." This time, the engines don't stop. The rumble builds, becoming a roar, and you feel the ship begin to move, pulling away from the mole, turning toward the open sea. Men crowd the rails, looking back at the beach, at the mole, at the thousands of men still visible in the distance, still waiting, still hoping for their turn. The Scottish corporal is at the rail, his face pressed against the metal, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'm sorry," he's saying over and over. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." You don't know if he's apologizing to the men left behind, or to God, or to himself for surviving when others didn't. Maybe all three. Maybe it doesn't matter. Guilt is guilt, and every man on this ship is carrying his share. The destroyer picks up speed, cutting through the water, heading north toward England. The beach recedes, becoming smaller, less detailed, until the individual men are no longer visible, and it's just a gray-brown line against the darker gray of the sea. The smoke from the burning town hangs in the air, a pall that will be visible for miles. A monument to destruction and desperate last stands. You lean back against the ventilation shaft and close your eyes, but the images are still there, burned into your retinas, into your memory. The beaches, the bodies, the endless waiting, the sound of the Stukas, the faces of men who didn't make it. You know these images will never leave you, that they'll be there when you close your eyes for the rest of your life, however long that might be. The ship rolls gently in the swells, and despite everything, despite the horror and the guilt and the bone-deep exhaustion, you feel yourself beginning to drift toward sleep. Your body demands it, your mind too overwhelmed to resist. Around you, other men are doing the same, slumping where they sit, their heads nodding forward onto their chests. And then, cutting through the sound of engines and wind and water, you hear it again. That whistle, that scream, that sound that you will hear in your nightmares for decades to come. The Stukas have found you. The destroyer's anti-aircraft guns open up with a thunderous chatter that makes your teeth ache and your bones vibrate. Tracers arc up into the sky, bright lines of red and orange that crisscross above the ship, trying to find the diving German bombers. The sailors manning the guns move with practiced efficiency, tracking targets, firing in controlled bursts, ejecting spent shells that clatter and roll across the deck. "Everyone down!" an officer screams. "Get down and stay down!" You press yourself flat against the deck, your hands over your head, making yourself as small as possible. Around you, hundreds of men do the same, creating a living carpet of khaki and steel helmets. The deck is wet, slick with seawater and oil, and you can feel the cold seeping through your uniform. But you don't move. Don't even think about moving. The whistle of the falling bombs is distinctive, different from the scream of the diving Stukas. It's a fluttering, tumbling sound, almost musical if it weren't so absolutely terrifying. You count them, 1, 2, 3, and wait for the impacts. The first bomb hits the water 50 yards off the starboard bow, sending up a massive column of white water that hangs in the air for a moment before crashing back down. The destroyer shudders, but keeps moving, keeps churning through the waves. The second bomb lands even closer, close enough that spray washes across the deck, drenching everyone. The third bomb strikes the destroyer amidships, punching through the deck like it's made of paper. There's a moment, less than a heartbeat, when nothing happens, when you can almost believe it's a dud, that you've been spared. Then the world explodes. The blast picks you up and throws you across the deck. You're weightless, flying, tumbling through space, and then you slam into something hard, a bulkhead maybe, or a piece of equipment, and the air is driven from your lungs in a single agonized whoosh. You lie there, stunned, unable to breathe, unable to move, watching as fire and smoke pour from the gaping wound in the center of the ship. Men are screaming. Not the screams of fear you've heard on the beach, but screams of agony, of flesh burning, of bodies broken. The destroyer lists to one side, tilting at an angle that becomes steeper with each passing second. Water is pouring in through the hole. You can see it, can hear the rush of it, can feel the ship dying beneath you. "Abandon ship!" someone is shouting. "Everyone off! Abandon ship!" You force yourself to move, to breathe, to function, despite the pain radiating from what you suspect are broken ribs. You pull yourself to your feet, using the tilting deck, using gravity to slide toward the rail. Around you, chaos. Men jumping into the sea, some with life jackets, most without. Others trying to help wounded comrades, dragging them toward the rail, toward the water that might save them, or might kill them, just as surely as staying on the sinking ship. The Scottish corporal appears beside you, his face blackened with soot, blood running from a cut above his eye. "Can you swim?" he shouts over the roar of fire and rushing water. "Yes," you shout back. "Then jump! Jump now before she goes under!" You don't think. Thinking will paralyze you, will make you remember that the water is freezing, that the current is strong, that men drown in the channel every day even without bombs and burning ships. You just climb onto the rail, your legs shaking, your body screaming in protest, and you jump. The fall seems to take forever. The water rushes up to meet you, gray and cold and merciless. You hit feet first, the impact like hitting concrete, driving you deep beneath the surface. The cold is shocking, driving the air from your lungs, making every muscle seize and cramp. You kick frantically, disoriented, not sure which way is up, panic clawing at your throat. Then you break the surface, gasping, choking on seawater, your arms flailing. You're alive. Somehow, impossibly, you're alive and floating, and the ship is still behind you, listing more severely now. Its bow rising out of the water as the stern sinks deeper. Men are everywhere in the water, hundreds of them, clinging to debris, to each other, fighting the current, fighting the cold, fighting for every breath. The destroyer is going down fast now, sliding beneath the waves with a terrible groaning sound, like some enormous creature dying. You want to look away, but you can't. You watch as the bow rises higher, higher, until the entire front half of the ship is pointing toward the sky like an accusing finger. Men are still on it, you can see them. Tiny figures clinging to the rails, unable or unwilling to jump. And then, with a final shudder, the destroyer slips beneath the surface, taking those men with it, leaving only bubbles and debris, and the spreading slick of oil on the water's surface. You tread water, your legs already growing heavy, your muscles protesting. How long can you last in water this cold? 20 minutes? 30? Your uniform is waterlogged, dragging you down, and your boots feel like anchors. You should remove them, you know you should, but your fingers are already numb, clumsy, and the thought of going underwater again, even deliberately, fills you with primal terror. Something bumps against you, and you cry out, thrashing away, thinking of bodies, of dead men floating in the darkness below. But it's just a piece of wood, part of a shattered lifeboat, floating on the swells. You grab it, pulling yourself onto it, sharing it with two other soldiers who look at you with eyes as hollow and exhausted as your own. The wood barely supports your weight, dipping below the surface, but it's something, some relief for your burning legs. "Look," one of the other men says, pointing with a shaking hand. "Look." You turn, following his gesture, and see them. Boats. Dozens of boats, maybe hundreds, all heading toward you, toward the scattered survivors floating in the cold water. But these aren't naval vessels, aren't destroyers or frigates. These are small boats, tiny boats, pleasure cruisers and fishing boats and tugboats and yachts. Civilian vessels, civilian crews, sailing straight into a war zone to save soldiers they've never met. The closest boat is a fishing trawler, old and weathered, its paint peeling, its engine coughing black smoke. An old man stands at the wheel, his face weathered as driftwood, his eyes scanning the water for survivors. When he spots your group, he turns the trawler toward you, throttling back the engine, pulling alongside. "Come on, then," he shouts, his accent pure Thames estuary. "Let's have you aboard. Quickly now." Hands reach down. The old man's hands, gnarled and strong, and another pair belonging to a boy who can't be more than 15. They pull you up, hauling you over the rail, depositing you on the deck where you lie gasping like a landed fish. The old man is already moving to the next group of survivors, the next clutch of drowning men. The deck of the trawler is crowded with soldiers, all of them soaked, shivering, staring at nothing. A woman, the old man's wife perhaps, moves among them with a kettle of tea, pouring it into cups, pressing the warm metal into shaking hands. She must have brought thermoses from home, must have prepared for this, knowing what she would find. "Here, love," she says, kneeling beside you, pressing a cup into your hands. The warmth of it is almost painful against your frozen fingers. Drink it slow, small sips. You obey, the hot liquid burning your throat, but warming you from the inside, chasing away some of the bone-deep cold. She moves on to the next soldier, and the next, her movements calm and efficient, as if rescuing drowning soldiers from a war zone is something she does every Sunday. The old man at the wheel is piloting the trawler through the debris field, threading between floating wreckage and bodies and swimmers. He stops again and again, pulling men from the water, packing them onto the deck until there's barely room to move. No one complains. No one asks if the boat is overloaded, if it might sink under the weight. They just make room, shuffling closer together, making space for one more, always one more. You look around at the other boats. They're all doing the same thing, these little civilian vessels, these weekend sailboats and Thames barges and motor yachts. They've crossed the channel, 26 miles of open water with German aircraft overhead and mines beneath and every possibility of being sunk, to do this, to save you, to save strangers, to do what the great warships cannot do, to get in close, to navigate the shallow waters, to pluck men from the sea one by one. A yacht pulls alongside, beautiful even in this moment, its brass fittings gleaming, its white hull pristine. A man in a yachting cap leans over the rail. "How many can you take?" he calls to the old fisherman. "She's full," the old man calls back. "Take these others." He gestures to a group of men clinging to an overturned lifeboat. The yacht moves off, and you watch as its crew, men in civilian clothes, weekend sailors pressed into service as saviors, haul the exhausted soldiers aboard. Nearby, a tugboat is doing the same, its crew working with the same desperate efficiency. And beyond them, more boats, a whole fleet of little ships, all converging on this spot where the destroyer went down, all racing against time and cold water and death. The Scottish corporal is aboard the trawler too, you discover. He's sitting near the bow, wrapped in a blanket someone has given him, staring back toward France, toward the smoke and fire still visible on the horizon. He's not crying anymore, but his face is set in hard lines, aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. The old fisherman swings the trawler around, pointing its bow north toward England. The engine coughs, sputters, then settles into a steady rhythm. You're moving. You're heading home. The deck is so crowded that you're pressed shoulder to shoulder with other soldiers, but no one minds. The warmth of other bodies is welcome, necessary, keeping the worst of the cold at bay. But the danger isn't over. You can still hear aircraft overhead, can still see the contrails of fighters wheeling and diving. The Luftwaffe hasn't given up, and these little boats, packed with soldiers, make perfect targets. As if summoned by your thoughts, a Messerschmitt appears, dropping out of the clouds, its machine guns chattering. The water around the trawler erupts in geysers as bullets stitch across the surface. Men cry out, ducking, covering their heads, though there's nowhere to hide, no protection on the open deck. The old fisherman doesn't flinch. He holds his course, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The bullets miss, barely, but they miss, and the Messerschmitt roars past, banking away, looking for other targets. "Bastards," the old man mutters, his first show of emotion since you came aboard. Then, louder, "Everyone all right? Anyone hit?" Miraculously, no one is hurt. The bullet struck water, wood, air, but not flesh. Not this time. The journey back to England takes hours. Hours of cold and wet and fear, hours of watching the sky, hours of listening to the engine's steady chug and praying it doesn't fail. The sun is setting by the time you see land, the white cliffs catching the last golden light, glowing like a promise, like salvation made solid. Dover. You're approaching Dover. The harbor is packed with ships, with more little boats bringing in more survivors, with ambulances and buses and trains waiting to take the rescued soldiers to safety. The dock workers are waving, cheering, shouting encouragement. And on the cliffs above, you can see people, hundreds of them, thousands maybe, come out to watch the boats arrive, to witness this impossible thing. The trawler pulls up to the dock, and sailors are there to help, reaching down to take soldiers' arms, to guide them onto solid ground. Your legs are shaking so badly you can barely walk, but hands support you, guide you forward, and suddenly you're off the boat. You're standing on English soil, your home. A woman in a WVS uniform presses a sandwich into your hands. White bread, real butter, cheese, and you eat it without tasting it, too overwhelmed to process anything beyond the fact that you're alive, that you survived, that the nightmare is over. But even as you stand there, even as you feel the solid ground beneath your feet, you're thinking about the beach, about the men still there, about the men who didn't make it onto boats, who died in the water, who died waiting for rescue that came too late or never came at all. The old fisherman is already preparing to leave again, you realize. He's taking on fuel, taking on more supplies. He's going back. He's going to make another trip, going to save more men, going to risk his life and his boat again and again until everyone is off that beach, or until the boat sinks, or until the Germans arrive. You want to say something to him, want to thank him, but the words won't come. What do you say to someone who saved your life? What words are adequate for that? So you just stand there, holding your sandwich, watching as the trawler pulls away from the dock, heading back out into the channel, back toward Dunkirk, back toward hell. And you understand in that moment that this is what heroism looks like. Not the glory of battle, not the charge into enemy fire, but this, an old fisherman in a leaky trawler, making trip after trip across dangerous water, asking nothing, expecting nothing, just doing what needs to be done because it needs to be done. Around you, thousands of soldiers are arriving, pouring off boats of every description, being herded onto trains, into buses, toward hospitals and barracks and homes. They're dirty, exhausted, some wounded, all traumatized, but they're alive. Against all odds, against all probability, they're alive. And on the horizon, barely visible in the gathering dusk, you can see the little ships still crossing the channel, still heading toward France, still going to bring more boys home. The train rattles through the English countryside, and you press your face against the window, watching fields and villages scroll past, each one impossibly green, impossibly peaceful, impossibly normal. Children wave from level crossings. Women hang washing in back gardens. A farmer drives a tractor through a field, following the same furrows his father probably followed, his grandfather before that, the rhythm of planting and harvesting unchanged by war or rumor of war. It seems impossible that these two worlds exist in the same time, in the same universe. The world of Dunkirk, of burning beaches and screaming bombs and men drowning in cold water. And this world of cricket pitches and pub gardens and Sunday church bells. They're barely 26 miles apart, but they might as well be on different planets. You're not alone in the compartment. 6 other soldiers share the space, all of them from different regiments, different units, thrown together by chance and circumstance. No one speaks. Words feel too heavy, too inadequate. What is there to say? We survived? We left thousands behind? We ran away? Every truth feels like an accusation. The soldier across from you, a sergeant from the Middlesex Regiment, hasn't stopped shaking since he boarded the train. His hands tremble in his lap, and occasionally his whole body gives a convulsive shudder, as if he's trying to shake off something invisible that clings to his skin. No one comments on it. Everyone understands. Everyone has their own tremors, their own invisible burdens. The train begins to slow, and you see a station platform ahead. A small market town, somewhere in Kent, you think, though you don't know for certain. As the train pulls to a stop, you see them, people crowding the platform, hundreds of them, waving flags, holding signs, cheering. "Heroes," they're shouting. "Welcome home. Well done." The word makes you flinch. Heroes. That's not the right word. Heroes don't retreat. Heroes don't abandon their equipment and run for the boats. Heroes don't leave their comrades behind to hold the line while they escape. The real heroes are still in France, still fighting the rearguard action that bought time for men like you to get away. The real heroes are dead on the beach, or drowning in the channel, or standing in patient lines still waiting for boats that might never come. But the people don't know that. They can't know that. All they know is what they've been told, that the British Expeditionary Force is coming home, that men are being evacuated from France, that this is somehow a victory rather than a catastrophic defeat. The train doors open and WVS women board, moving through the compartments with baskets of sandwiches, with thermoses of tea, with cigarettes and chocolate and kind words. An older woman, someone's grandmother probably, with steel gray hair and a gentle face, stops at your compartment. "Here you are, boys," she says, distributing sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. "Fresh made this morning, and there's tea, nice and hot." She pauses, looking at each of you in turn, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You've done us all proud. You really have." The sergeant, who won't stop shaking, makes a sound, half laugh, half sob. "Proud," he repeats, the word bitter in his mouth. "Right." If the woman hears the bitterness, she doesn't show it. She just pats his shoulder, a grandmother's gesture of comfort, and moves on to the next compartment. You unwrap the sandwich, ham and mustard on soft white bread, and eat it mechanically. It tastes like nothing. Everything tastes like nothing. You wonder if food will ever have flavor again, if the world will ever seem real again, or if you'll spend the rest of your life feeling like you're watching everything through a pane of glass. The train stays at the station for 10 minutes, and the whole time people keep coming, keep waving, keep cheering. Some of them are crying, women mostly, thinking of their own sons and husbands still in France, still fighting, still in danger. An old man in a Great War uniform stands ramrod straight, saluting as the train begins to pull away. He holds the salute until you're out of sight, his arm unwavering, his face carved from stone. The countryside gives way to suburbs, then to the sprawl of London. You can see barrage balloons floating above the city like fat silver fish straining against their cables. Anti-aircraft guns bristle on rooftops. The war has come to England too, you realize, or will come soon. The beaches were just the beginning. The real fight is still ahead. The train pulls into Victoria Station, and the chaos is overwhelming. Thousands of soldiers are here, disembarking from dozens of trains, all arriving from Dover, from Ramsgate, from every port along the south coast. Ambulances wait for the wounded. Buses idle at the curb, ready to take men to temporary barracks, to hospitals, to homes. Red Cross workers and Salvation Army volunteers move through the crowds with bandages and hot drinks and infinite patience. You file off the train with the others, letting the crowd carry you forward. Not thinking, not deciding, just moving because everyone else is moving. Someone pushes a cup of tea into your hands. Someone else, a young woman in a green WVS uniform, asks if you're injured, if you need medical attention. You shake your head, unable to form words, and she marks something on a clipboard and moves on. You're herded into a queue, another queue, always queues, where uniformed clerks sit at folding tables taking names, checking papers, trying to account for who's returned and who hasn't. When your turn comes, you give your name, rank, and serial number and watch as the clerk makes a notation in a ledger. "Regiment?" he asks, his pencil poised. You tell him. "Right. You'll be given railway vouchers to return to your unit's assembly point. They're regrouping at Aldershot. Report there by..." He consults a sheet. "By Thursday. That gives you 3 days. You're officially on survivor's leave until then." He stamps a paper and hands it to you. "Next. 3 days. 72 hours before you have to think about being a soldier again, before you have to face officers and debriefings and the impossible task of rebuilding units that have been shattered. 72 hours to try to become human again. The railway vouchers in your pocket will take you anywhere in Britain. You could go home, back to Manchester, to your mother's house, to your old room with its boyhood treasures still on the shelves. You could walk in the door, and she would hold you and cry and make you tea and feed you until you couldn't move. You could sleep in a real bed with clean sheets. You could try to forget, but you don't want to go home. You can't go home. Not yet. The thought of bringing what you've seen, what you've experienced, what you've become, into that small house, into your mother's presence, feels obscene. She would see it in your eyes, the thing that's been done to you, the thing you've done. And she would try to fix it, try to make it better, and you can't bear the thought of watching her realize that this is not something that can be fixed. Instead, you find yourself walking, just walking, with no destination, no plan. Out of Victoria Station, into the London streets, joining the flow of evening crowds, of people heading home from work, of lovers meeting for dinner, of life continuing in its ordinary patterns despite everything. You walk for hours, through neighborhoods whose names you don't know, past pubs where men drink pints and argue about football, past shops closing for the day, past cinemas with queues of people waiting to see the latest picture. The sun sets, and blackout curtains go up in windows, and street lamps remain unlit. The city is preparing for war, for bombing raids that will come eventually, inevitably. But tonight it's peaceful. Tonight it's just a city, just people living their lives. Eventually you find yourself in a park. Hyde Park, you think, though you're not certain. You sit on a bench near the Serpentine, watching the last light fade from the sky, watching darkness spread across the water. Other people walk past, couples mostly, arm in arm, talking in low voices. A dog chases a ball across the grass, its joy unself-conscious and absolute. The Scottish corporal from the destroyer, you never learned his name, sits down on the other end of the bench. You don't know how he found you, if he followed you, or if it's just chance, just the two of you drawn to the same spot by the same need for quiet and darkness and solitude that isn't quite alone. "Can't go home," he says after a long silence. Not a question, a statement of fact. "No," you agree. Me neither. He pulls out a cigarette, lights it, takes a long drag, offers you one, which you take even though you don't usually smoke. The tobacco is harsh and bitter, but the ritual of it, the lighting, the inhaling, the slow exhale, is calming. My ma'am would take one look at me and know that I left men behind, know that I got on a boat while others didn't, know that I'm a coward. You're not a coward. How do you know? He turns to look at you, and in the darkness, you can just make out his face, younger than you remembered, his eyes reflecting the distant lights of the city. You don't know me. Maybe I pushed someone out of the way to get on that boat. Maybe I stepped over wounded men to save myself. How do you know I didn't? Did you? A long pause. No. But I thought about it. When the ship was sinking, when we were in the water, I thought about pushing someone away from that piece of wood. Thought about saving myself at someone else's expense. I didn't do it, but I thought about it. Doesn't that make me just as bad? You don't have an answer for him. You're thinking about your own thoughts, your own moments of absolute selfishness, the times when survival instinct overrode everything else. Maybe everyone who survived has those moments. Maybe that's what survival requires, a willingness to be selfish, to choose yourself over others, to live with that choice afterward. We got off the beach, you say finally. We're alive. That has to count for something. Does it? He drops his cigarette, grinds it out under his heel. When they write about this, about Dunkirk, what will they say? That we abandoned France? That we ran away? That we left our equipment and our dead and our wounded and scurried back to England like rats fleeing a sinking ship? I don't know what they'll say, but we didn't start this war. We didn't choose to be in France, didn't choose to be pushed back to the sea. We did what we were ordered to do. We survived, and now we can fight again. That's not nothing. He doesn't respond, just sits there in the darkness, and after a while, you realize he's crying. Silent tears that run down his face, that he makes no attempt to wipe away. You don't say anything. Don't try to comfort him. Some grief is too deep for comfort, too personal for sharing. You just sit with him. Two soldiers on a bench in a London park, both carrying the weight of Dunkirk, both trying to figure out how to keep living with that weight. Eventually he stands, nods to you, a gesture of goodbye or recognition or shared understanding, and walks away into the darkness. You don't see him again. You never learn his name, never find out what happens to him, if he returns to his unit, if he fights again, if he survives the war. He's just another soldier, one of hundreds of thousands, each with their own story, their own trauma, their own private battle with memory and guilt, and the simple, terrible fact of being alive when others are dead. You sit on the bench until deep night, until the park is empty, until the distant sounds of the city fade to almost nothing. Above you, stars are visible despite the ambient light, more stars than you've seen in years, the blackout making the sky darker, clearer. You try to remember if there were stars over Dunkirk, if you looked up at any point and saw them, but you can't remember. The sky there was all smoke and fire and diving aircraft. If there were stars, you never saw them. Eventually, stiff and cold, you stand and begin walking again. You need to find somewhere to sleep, a church hall taking in soldiers maybe, or a shelter, or just a doorway somewhere. It doesn't matter. Sleep is sleep, and rest is rest, and tomorrow you'll figure out the next step. As you walk through the dark streets, you think about the old fisherman, about his trawler heading back across the channel. Is he still there, still making trips, still pulling men from the water? How many journeys has he made? How many lives has he saved? Will anyone remember his name, or will he just be one of the little ships, anonymous, his heroism absorbed into the collective story? You think about the men still on the beach, still waiting. How many are left? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Are the boats still coming? Is the evacuation still happening? Or has it ended? Have the last ships pulled away, leaving those final soldiers to surrender or die or fight to the bitter end? You don't have answers. You're just one man, one soldier, one tiny part of something vast and terrible and beyond your comprehension. But you're alive, and in this moment, on this night, walking through the dark streets of London with the weight of Dunkirk on your shoulders, that's enough. It has to be enough. Because tomorrow, or the day after, or next week, you'll be called upon to fight again. The war isn't over. It's barely begun. This was just the first defeat, the first retreat. There will be more battles, more beaches, more moments when survival hangs by a thread and ordinary men are asked to do extraordinary things. But tonight, you're alive. Tonight, you're home. Tonight, England sleeps behind its blackout curtains, and somewhere across the channel, boats are still sailing toward France, and men are still being saved. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough reason to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep believing that all of this, the suffering, the sacrifice, the terrible cost, means something. You have to believe that. Because if it doesn't mean something, if it's all just chaos and death and randomness, then what's the point of surviving? What's the point of anything? So you walk through the dark streets, and you breathe, and you put one foot in front of the other, and you carry on. Because that's what soldiers do. That's what survivors do. They carry on. 3 months have passed since Dunkirk. 3 months that feel like 3 years, or 3 lifetimes, or no time at all. Time has become strange, elastic, unreliable. Some days blur together, indistinguishable. Others stand out with painful clarity, the faces of men you knew, the sound of particular explosions, the taste of salt water and fear. You're sitting in a pub in Aldershot, nursing a pint that's gone warm in your hands. The pub is crowded with soldiers, men from your regiment, men who were at Dunkirk, men who have joined since, fresh recruits who don't yet know what war really means. The conversations around you are loud, boisterous, full of laughter and profanity and the particular humor that develops among men who live with death as a constant companion. But you're not really part of it. You're here, physically present, but some part of you is still on the beach, still in the water, still standing in that endless queue waiting for ships. The doctors have a name for it now. Battle fatigue, they call it, or operational exhaustion. Some of the men have been sent away, to hospitals where they're supposed to recover, to rest homes where they're supposed to heal. But most are still here, still with their units, still preparing for the next deployment because the army needs every man it can get. The newspapers have been full of Dunkirk. Churchill made a speech in Parliament. You read it in the papers, the words stirring even in black and white. "We shall fight on the beaches," he said. "We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." The words gave people hope, turned defeat into defiance, transformed retreat into something almost noble. The miracle of Dunkirk, they're calling it. 338,000 men evacuated, saved from certain death or capture. The little ships have become legend, their story told and retold, embellished and celebrated. The fishermen and weekend sailors, the Thames barges and pleasure cruisers, all elevated to mythic status. And it was a miracle, you suppose. Against all odds, against all probability, most of the BEF made it home. You're alive because of those little ships, because of the destroyer that picked you up, and the old fisherman who pulled you from the water. Hundreds of thousands of men are alive for the same reason. That matters. That means something. But it was also a defeat. A massive, catastrophic defeat. France has fallen. The British Army left behind thousands of tons of equipment. Tanks, artillery, vehicles, rifles, all now in German hands. Thousands of soldiers didn't make it off the beach, were killed or captured or died in the water. The French soldiers who held the perimeter, who bought time with their blood, were mostly left behind, sacrificed to save the British. That matters too. That means something too. Both things are true. Both things exist simultaneously, uncomfortably. It was a miracle. It was a defeat. Men were heroes. Men ran away. The little ships saved thousands. Thousands more died. There's no way to reconcile these contradictions. No way to make them fit together into a coherent narrative. You just have to hold them both. Accept them both. Live with them both. The man sitting next to you at the bar is new to the regiment, a replacement for one of the men who didn't come back from France. He's young, eager, full of questions about what it was like, what combat is really like beyond the training exercises and the parade ground drill. "What was Dunkirk like?" he asks, his eyes bright with curiosity and something that might be excitement. "Was it really as bad as they say?" You look at him, this boy, because he is a boy, can't be more than 19, and you try to think of how to answer. How do you explain Dunkirk? How do you put into words something that exists beyond words, beyond explanation? It was... You start, then stop. What was it? Terrifying? Yes, but that doesn't capture it. Chaotic? True, but incomplete. Hopeless? Sometimes, but not always. It was waiting, you say finally. Mostly it was just waiting. Waiting for bombs, waiting for ships, waiting to live or die and not knowing which it would be. "But you made it out," the boy says. "You're here. That must feel good knowing you survived." "Yeah," you say, taking a drink of your warm beer. "Yeah, I survived." But you don't tell him about the guilt, about waking up at night with the sound of the Stukas in your ears, about seeing the faces of men who didn't make it, whose names you didn't know, whose deaths you witnessed but could do nothing to prevent, about wondering why you lived when others died, what arbitrary chance or luck or divine intervention decided that you would get on a boat and someone else wouldn't. You don't tell him because he'll learn it himself soon enough. He'll see combat, probably soon, given how the war is going, and he'll understand then that surviving doesn't feel like victory. It feels like being hollowed out, like having something essential removed from your center, like carrying a weight that never gets lighter no matter how much time passes. The door to the pub opens, letting in a gust of autumn wind and a middle-aged man in civilian clothes. He makes his way to the bar, orders a pint, and you recognize him after a moment. The old fisherman, the man with the trawler who pulled you from the channel. He's smaller than you remembered, older, more ordinary. In your memory, he's a giant, a hero, larger than life. But here, in this pub, he's just a man, weathered and tired, drinking a pint after a long day's work. You should say something to him. You should thank him, buy him a drink, tell him what he did, what it meant. But you can't make yourself move. What would you say? How do you thank someone for your life? What words are adequate for that debt? While you're still trying to decide, trying to work up the courage, he finishes his pint and leaves, disappearing back into the autumn evening. And you're left with the missed opportunity, the words unsaid, another small regret to add to the collection. The evening wears on. The pub empties gradually as men stumble off to their barracks, to their billets, to their beds. You stay until the landlord calls last orders, until there's no excuse to remain. Then you make your way back through the dark streets, the blackout making navigation difficult, making every shadow a potential obstacle. Your billet is in a requisitioned house, 6 men to a room, sleeping on narrow army cots with thin blankets and thinner mattresses. The others are already asleep when you enter, their snores and muttered dream words filling the darkness. You undress quietly, carefully, and lie down on your cot. Sleep doesn't come easily anymore. It never does. Every time you close your eyes, you're back there. Back on the beach, back in the water, back on the sinking destroyer. The memories play on an endless loop, varying in detail but never in essence. Always the sound of the stukas, always the cold water, always the faces of men dying. You've tried drinking yourself to sleep. It helps sometimes, numbs the edges enough that exhaustion can take over. You've tried reading until your eyes blur and close of their own accord. You've tried exercise, running until your legs give out, as if you could physically exhaust the memories away. Nothing really works. The memories are patient. They wait. They're always there, ready to surface the moment your guard drops. In the bed next to yours, one of the other men cries out in his sleep, a sharp animal sound of pure terror. Then he settles again, his breathing returning to normal, whatever nightmare had him releasing its grip. For now. You wonder how many men are lying awake right now, all across England, all across the world, all carrying their own wars inside their heads. How many are reliving their own beaches, their own sinking ships, their own moments when everything hung in the balance, and they somehow, impossibly survived. The war is going to last for years. Everyone knows it now, though no one likes to say it out loud. France has fallen, but Britain fights on. The invasion that everyone expected, that everyone feared, hasn't come. Maybe it won't come. Maybe Hitler will turn his attention elsewhere, to Russia or Africa or some other theater. Or maybe the invasion fleets are being prepared right now, just across the channel, just 26 miles away from where those beaches once held hundreds of thousands of desperate men. If the Germans come, you'll fight. When you're deployed again, to North Africa or the Mediterranean, or back to France eventually, you'll fight. Not because you're brave, not because you believe in glory or honor, or any of the words that used to mean something before Dunkirk taught you what war really is. You'll fight because that's what you do. Because your friends are fighting. Because surrender means the end of everything. Means living in a world where might makes right and jackboots march through every street in Europe. You'll fight because you survived Dunkirk, and that survival has to mean something. The old fisherman didn't risk his life, didn't cross the channel into a war zone, just so you could give up. The destroyer captain didn't stay to take on more men, didn't go down with his ship, just so you could accept defeat. The men who held the perimeter, who fought the rearguard action, who bought time with their blood, they didn't sacrifice themselves so you could surrender. Their sacrifice demands something of you. Demands that you keep going, keep fighting, keep believing that there's something worth fighting for. Freedom, maybe. Democracy. The right to live without fear of midnight knocks on the door, of secret police, of camps and gas chambers and all the evil that the Nazi regime represents. Or maybe it's something simpler. Maybe it's just for England. For green fields and village churches and the right to complain about the weather. For your mother's house in Manchester. For the girl you kissed at the train station. For pints in pubs and cricket on village greens and all the small, ordinary things that make life worth living. Outside, you hear a sound. A familiar sound. One that makes your heart rate spike and your body tense. Aircraft engines. But it's okay. It's all right. These are friendly. RAF planes on patrol, or bombers heading out for a night raid over Germany. The sound fades, and you force yourself to relax. Force your breathing to slow. Force the panic to recede. This is your life now. This is what Dunkirk has made you. A man who jumps at aircraft sounds, who can't sleep through the night, who carries a war inside him that will never really end even if the shooting stops. But you're alive. Against all odds, against all probability, you made it off that beach. You survived the Stukas and the sinking destroyer and the cold water of the channel. You got home. And as long as you're alive, as long as you can still breathe and think and feel, there's hope. Not the naive hope of before, not the belief that everything will be fine if you just try hard enough, but something harder, something tested, something that has looked at the worst the world can offer and decided to keep going anyway. You think about the spring, about when the weather turns, when the days grow longer, when the channel will be calmer. The war will still be going on then. You'll probably be deployed somewhere, fighting in some other country, on some other beach perhaps. But spring will come anyway, indifferent to human conflict, following its own ancient rhythms. And someday, maybe years from now, maybe decades, the war will end. Men will come home. The guns will fall silent. The beaches will be peaceful again, empty except for tourists and locals. No more queues of desperate soldiers, no more blood in the sand. Dunkirk will become history, a story told to children, a chapter in textbooks. The little ships will be forgotten except by enthusiasts and historians. The men who were there will grow old and die, and eventually there will be no one left who remembers what it was really like. But for now, you remember. You carry it with you. The beach, the bombs, the bodies, the boats, the old fisherman who saved your life, the Scottish corporal who cried in the park, the man who died in your arms asking you to tell his wife something he never finished saying. You carry all of it, and you'll keep carrying it for as long as you live. Because remembering is the least you can do. Remembering is how you honor the men who didn't make it home, the men whose names you never knew, the men whose stories ended on a beach in France while yours continued. So you lie in your narrow cot, in a requisitioned house in Aldershot, listening to the snores of your comrades, feeling the weight of memory settling over you like a blanket. And eventually, fitfully, you sleep, and you dream of beaches and boats and the endless gray sea. And somewhere, perhaps, an old fisherman lies in his own bed, in his own house by the Thames, dreaming his own dreams of the men he saved and the trips he made into hell and back. And perhaps, in his dreams, it all means something. Perhaps, in his dreams, the sacrifice was worth it. And perhaps, when you wake in the morning, when dawn breaks over England, and another day begins, you'll believe that too. Perhaps. The sun is setting over Dover, painting the white cliffs gold and pink, turning the channel into a sheet of hammered copper. You're standing on the beach, not Dunkirk this time, but Dover, the place where so many of the little ships departed from, where so many soldiers arrived, cold and wet and traumatized, but alive. It's 1944 now, 4 years since Dunkirk, 4 years of fighting, in North Africa, in Italy, in a dozen other places whose names have blurred together in your memory. 4 years of learning to be a soldier not just in training, but in truth, learning to kill and to watch friends die and to keep going despite it all. The war isn't over yet, but everyone can feel that it's turning. The tide is shifting. The liberation of France is coming. Soon, everyone says, though no one knows exactly when. Soon you'll go back across the channel, back to France, but this time not in retreat. This time advancing. This time as liberators, not defeated refugees. You've been granted a weekend pass, and instead of going to London or home to Manchester, you've come here. To Dover, to the place where your war began, in a sense, where you stepped off a fishing trawler and onto English soil and tried to figure out how to keep living. There are other soldiers on the beach, other men with passes, other men who've been through what you've been through or worse. Some of them are American, part of the massive buildup of forces preparing for the invasion. They seem young to you, though some of them are older than you are. Maybe it's not age but experience that you're seeing. The difference between men who've been tested and men who haven't yet, though that difference will disappear soon enough when the shooting starts. You walk along the water's edge, letting the waves lap at your boots, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Somewhere across that water in France, people are suffering under Nazi occupation. People are waiting, hoping, praying for liberation. Children are growing up under swastikas, learning to hate, learning to fear. And soon, you and hundreds of thousands of other soldiers will cross this water to free them. It will be dangerous. Men will die. Many men, probably. But this time it will be different from Dunkirk. This time you're not running away. This time you're going back to finish what was started. You think about the old fisherman sometimes. Wonder if he's still alive, if he's well, if he's proud of what he did, or if he just thinks of it as something that needed doing. You never saw him again after that night in the pub, never got to thank him properly. But you think about him, often. And you think about the Scottish corporal, the one who cried in Hyde Park. You learned later that he was killed in North Africa at El Alamein, doing something that earned him a posthumous medal for valor. You hope that wherever he is now, whatever comes after, he knows that he wasn't a coward, that his final actions proved something important about who he really was. You think about all the men who didn't make it off the beach, the ones who died waiting for ships, the ones who drowned in the channel, the ones who were captured. You carry their names with you, the ones you knew, at least, the ones whose faces you remember. You say them sometimes like a prayer or a promise that their deaths will mean something, that the war will be won, that the world they died trying to save will be worth saving. The sun touches the horizon now, balanced on the edge of the world, flooding the sky with color. Other soldiers have stopped to watch, drawn by the beauty of it, by the momentary peace. For just these few minutes, there is no war, no killing, no fear. There's just this sunset and this beach and these men standing together, watching the day end. Tomorrow, you'll return to your unit. Tomorrow, the training will continue, the preparation for the invasion that everyone knows is coming. Tomorrow, the war will go on. But tonight, just for tonight, there's this sunset. There's the sound of waves on sand. There's the memory of an old fisherman and a sinking destroyer and a long line of men waiting patiently for salvation. There's the knowledge that you survived, that you're here, that you get to see another sunset. And maybe, that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can ask for. To survive, to remember, to honor the dead by living, to keep going despite everything, to keep fighting, despite the fear and the exhaustion and the bone-deep certainty that this war will never really end, that even when the shooting stops, you'll carry it with you forever. The sun slips below the horizon, and darkness begins to spread across the water. The other soldiers drift away, heading back toward town, toward pubs and billets and whatever comfort they can find. You stay a moment longer, alone on the beach, listening to the waves, thinking about beaches and boats, and the long journey from Dunkirk to here, from defeat to the edge of victory. Then you turn and walk away, your boots leaving prints in the sand that the tide will erase, leaving no trace that you were ever here at all. But you were here. You are here. You survived. And that matters. That will always matter. You carry Dunkirk with you, the good and the bad, the heroism and the horror, the miracle and the defeat. You carry it in your dreams and your memories and the way you jump at sudden sounds. You carry it in the faces you see when you close your eyes, in the names you whisper in the dark, in the debt you owe to an old fisherman whose name you never learned. You carry it, and you'll keep carrying it for as long as you live. Because that's what survivors do. They carry the weight. They remember. They keep going. And somewhere, out on the channel, The wind blows across the same waters where little ships once sailed into hell to save men they didn't know. The same waters where destroyers sank and soldiers drowned, and miracles happened against all odds. The same waters you'll cross again soon, going back to France, going back to war, going back to finish what was started. But that's tomorrow. That's next week. That's the future. Tonight there's just this beach, this darkness, this moment of peace before the storm. And that's enough. It has to be enough. Because the war goes on, and you go on with it, carrying Dunkirk, carrying the dead, carrying the weight of survival. Forward, always forward, toward whatever comes next. Until then, take care of yourselves. Hold your loved ones close. And remember the lessons of Dunkirk, that even in the darkest moments, even in defeat, there can be dignity and heroism and hope. I'll see you in the next journey through time. Safe travels, friends.